welcome back to Jocelyn's Art Corner. And this is our first official episode interview. And I would like to interview our first artist on the show. We have Kevin Adam Flores. Now, Kevin, hello, Kevin.
Hi.
Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. But Kevin, we've actually known each other for quite some time. We went to high school together, and we used to like critique each other's writing compositions in English.
I remember that. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like a while. That was a while ago. So Kevin is a writer and poet. He's actually he's based here in Brownsville, Texas. Were you born here?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and he's been published in Gallery Magazine and Pulse Magazine. Those are UTRGV publications, and also in the Chachalaca Review. And let me see what I have on my notes. You've also been in the Fleas on the Dog and Blink Inc.'s Kitty Wang Press. So that's great. You know, it's really awesome that you pursued this. So, well, welcome, Kevin, once again. And let's just start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. Well, my name's Kevin, and I've been living in Brownsville pretty much all my life. And I started writing since like I was like in kinder. It's crazy. Yeah. And I've just been doing that as a hobby like throughout my whole life. And what I do right now is that I'm a library assistant at an elementary school for BISD. And I work with a librarian who has really tried to teach the students poetry more often.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. We don't have an art teacher there, and she feels like creative arts has kind of been, dying out, especially around here, in the valley and areas like that. So we've really been pushing that with the students so that way they can really bring out their artistic visions.
Yeah, that's amazing because for me, as a kid, like I always liked being in, I guess you would call them extracurricular activities, but those I think are fundamental to any curriculum.
Yes.
Having the arts as that creative outlet and to be expressive of whatever feelings or processing anything that you might be going through outside of school.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
I think that's very important, and that's great that there's other people who also feel strongly about that.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so what led you to pursue the path of a writer?
I don't know really. Like, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I feel like when I was growing up, I had like my father and my brother who were really into like rock and all that stuff, and they introduced me to it, and I would listen to a lot of the lyrics that would be presented, and I was like, wow, I really like what they're saying, but I wasn't, as I grew up, I found out that I wasn't talented musically. So it was kind of like, well, how do I express myself without having to, put a musical touch to it? And I'm like, well, I could just write lyrics. Mm-hmm. So that's how I started out. And I was just, I guess, like just by listening to bands and reading more as I grew up, I was just like, okay, I can do this. And I just started writing lyrics, and I just started writing songs, and then songs ended up becoming poetry. And it's just something that was very therapeutic for me growing up, So I don't know, I guess that's how it came about. So yeah.
So all this, like the music, it goes hand in hand with like you just writing out your thoughts into like a song, and then that just turned into a poem.
Yeah, it turned into a poem, and that led me to, other poets and just reading poetry, and yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, I bet. And well, how about you tell us a little bit about your creative process, like what sparks that moment where you want to write something down, or like what's that like for you?
It's very emotional. Like when I get very caught up in the moment, if I've had like a very if I've had some sort of experience that like I just can't seem to get over, and I feel hurt by it, or it doesn't have to be pain all the time. If I feel happy about it, and it really resonates with me, and I feel like I can add a poetic touch to it. That's when I'm like, okay, yeah, that experience meant that much to me, to the point where I can, structure it out and make it sound poetic. And um, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes it's spontaneous, and then there's other times where like I'm like, yeah, I want to write about that, and I start jotting things down, and over time, it becomes this whole epic. I mean, there are actually a couple of poems that I still haven't finished, and I've been writing them for like almost a decade.
Those works in progress. The never-ending works in progress.
And the thing is that like while I'm writing those, while I'm thinking I'm gonna finish this at some point, I start living more, and I keep gaining experience, and then I want to write about something else in my life that happened, and just to make myself feel better, if not for people to relate if they do read my material. So yeah, sometimes it's kind of it comes easy to me, and then there's other poems where I'm just like, yeah, okay, I don't know how I'm gonna like reword this.
So you just get stuck on certain.
Yeah, and then like writer's block occurs, and then that turns kind of into procrastination.
Okay.
And I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, I'll just get to it at some point.
Yeah.
But then it starts eating at me, and I'm just like, no, I gotta finish this, because if I don't finish this, it's gonna end up like my other poems that I haven't finished for years, and
so
it's just gonna keep
list gets getting longer.
just piling up a bunch of unfinished works, So yeah, I definitely like dive into certain poems that I'm just like, yeah, no, I want somebody to hear this, read this. It could be a crowd, it can be a few people, it can be one person, it doesn't matter to me. If somebody can read it and relate and feel like they can express themselves the way that I've learned to do, then I feel like I've done something right.
I mean, in a way, it's like, well, one, it's a very raw experience.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then in another way, it's like, kind of like, hey, like, I know I'm not alone. I know there has to be someone else out there that's been through even remotely similar to what I'm experiencing, what I have experienced. So it's that, that connection to your audience in that way. It's very emotional.
Yeah, and there's been times in my life where I feel alone. And the more I write, the less alone I feel. Because I'm like, I'm pretty sure somebody out there feels the same way I do. So, and it's writing poetry, writing songs, it's helped me so much. So that's why I just started really embracing that. And as of lately, I've really been embracing the culture down here. And so I've really started incorporating that into my poetry as well. And that's made me really find myself, because I feel like the longest time I felt lost, And the one thing I feel like I'm, sort of good at, I would hope to be great, I don't know, but that it's really helped me out. So.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some of Kevin's work, and I recommend to you all to explore, what he has, because it's it's like this. I feel like your work touches on that, the feelings of like alienation and, feeling like you're lost, and kind of like finding your place in your world where, and especially us, we're artists on the border, so it's like we're neither here nor there, and I think that's also a very important theme to bring up, because it goes back to your identity, like, who am I, what defines me, or what do I connect with or relate to that makes me me,
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yes.
Yeah, it took me a while to really find my identity, to really feel like my true self. you know, and it's it's painful, um, but I've noticed artists like you and local artists here in Brownsville, and I'm like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
I feel part of that community.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure. For
so
sure. I've been feeling, I mean, that's why this whole thing came about, and that's why I'm very excited to share that with you because, I mean, who would have thought, like, what, 10 years ago? It's already been 10 years since we graduated.
I know it's crazy.
10 years ago that we would be here today discussing all of this and both of us having that mutual feeling of like, you know what, we're part of an artistic community. And yeah, I strongly feel that. And I talked about this in the intro for the Art Corner show, that there's just so much talent here and there's a
Yes.
lot of creatives here and we just need to tap into that. And I think it's important to have those, like, how should I put it, like a mutual like acknowledgement of like, you're here, and like let's just work together and support each other.
Yeah.
And so I think it's awesome being part of this artistic community.
Yes.
And it spans not just like, it's like writing and it's visual arts, and it can be like,
All
it can
types of
take
arts.
any form, but an outlet for creative expression is like so important. And I think a lot of people are not exactly in touch with that part of themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe they're just like, like I don't want to, but that's not for me.
Yeah, and I see that often,
Yeah.
and it's like I want to tell them, like, there's an outlet, that there's a way for you to express yourself. Don't hold back, don't prevent yourself from voicing whatever you want to share with everyone. But with some of the people down here, I just feel like with me, I went at my own pace.
Yes.
I felt like that, and it took me years until I felt like, you know what, yeah, I could submit that, and somebody will read it, and hopefully it'll be shared more, and this and that. I would have so many songs and poems that I wrote, and like I'm like, nobody's ever gonna read these. It's sort of, it kind of made me a little sad because it's like, is it just for me, or do I want other people to reach out? I want to reach out, and I want for them to reach out as well.
Yeah.
So how better than do that, but to just write.
Yeah.
So.
No, I hear you. Definitely hear you. So, okay, well, going back to your work, what subject matter do you cover in your? I know your process is like a very, your themes are very like emotional, or like you're in this state where you just want to release certain things. So, what does your subject matter deal with?
I think it deals with what we were talking about, identity. I feel like a lot of the times I've felt lost and I didn't know what to do, and I really wanted to touch on that matter. So I'm like, how do I express a human being lost, like completely lost, and not knowing what to do next? And I read a lot of that. I've tried a lot to be positive and write family friendly material. And every time I try doing that, there's always that like I always think, oh, but there's also sadness to it too. It just depends what kind of perspective you're looking at.
Right.
And so I feel like I kind of focus more on the bittersweetness of life. Because like you're saying, artists like us are neither here nor there, and I like to express that there's a lot of in-betweens.
Yes, that gray area.
There's always that gray area, and you're always going to have mixed feelings about something. So, it's kind of just writing out a balance, and I guess that's what I try focusing on. It's a lot of heartbreak, but then it's also a lot of hope.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So it's like a nice combination of the two. You know?
I try aiming for that a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you'll feel hopeless,
Mm-hmm.
but you're not always going to feel like that.
Yeah.
You know, as cliche as it sounds, there's always that light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
So there's also that hope, you know, there's being hopeless and then there's being hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
And I always write about feeling in between.
Okay.
And by the time I get to the end of a poem, I hope to get to that light instead of staying in that darkness.
Yeah.
So.
But your writing in itself is that way for you. It's like that tunnel for you, because you're going through that darkness, you know, but you're finding that light at, you know, once you're done with this, it's like, hey, that was it for me.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm writing my way out of that darkness.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll make me feel better and I'll feel that light, you know.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, because we also have to remember, I mean, I totally hear you, because me, I've been practicing yoga for a few months now regularly, and it's this thing, like, I have different instructors, and you know, I've heard like more than one say, like, your thoughts are as clouds, you know, be whatever, like positive or negative.
Yeah.
They're passing, they're in passing, they're not. So, like, nothing is permanent, you know, whether it's that feeling of, like, hopelessness or I'm lost or even, like, happiness and all.
Yeah.
Like, you're not always going to be that way. So just, like, embracing that, you know.
Yeah.
And not so much attaching yourself to it, but experiencing it for what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite films is Boyhood.
Boyhood, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing film.
And Ethan Hawke's character says that, you know, we're just human and we're just getting by, you know, we're passing by and we're just winging it.
Yeah.
You know, and I really, like, that really resonated with me. Because it's like, you know, we'll feel like we'll fail at some point in our lives and we'll be successful and all that, but really, ultimately, we're just getting by and trying to be happy with ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, as simple or chaotic as it may be.
Right.
So.
It's like so simple, but why is that one thing like so challenging?
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of being, you know, living this human experience, and in this way, your creative outlet, which is writing, that's how you're, you know, winging it, you know.
Yeah.
But I think you do more than that, because you, like I said, like, you're finding that hope and then on to the next one and on to the next one. So that's like that's your drive.
Yeah. You know, and you know, I'm gonna write about something, and you know, hopefully I come out of it positive.
Yeah.
And then something else down the line in life is gonna come out like unexpectedly, and it's gonna bring me down. But then it's like, okay, I guess I'll write about this next, and I'll come out of it again.
For sure.
So.
Good stuff. And well, now I'd like to ask you, who are some poets or writers that have influenced your work?
You know, it's so strange, because before I got to college, I didn't read so much poetry.
Okay.
But then I started taking, you know, the required writing classes, and I had this wonderful professor named Chip Cameron.
Okay.
And he started introducing me to Walt Whitman and Bukowski and stuff like that, and I was just like, wow, like these guys have gone through some stuff, you know, and you know, and that's another thing too, like you know, you get to middle school or high school, and you know, English teachers are like, Shakespeare. But I never felt like I related to Shakespeare.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, maybe it was the way he wrote his sonnets or something like that, but it was those guys that really started, like, okay. And then, like, you know, and then outside of poetry, you know, I started reading Salinger. But, yeah, those guys, you know, the more raw and emotional poets are, the more I get sucked into it. You know, I read a lot of romantic poetry, um, super random, but like Dead Poet Society with Robin Williams.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
all the stuff, all his teachings in that film.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, you know, it makes me feel like alive, like I was like part of that classroom.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Man, that film, and I mean, it's crazy that you bring it up now because it's been years since I've seen it. But I love when a film like reaches you like that, where it moves you.
Yeah.
Where I mean, I remember seeing it and just feeling that strongly also, and being part of that, and having that like, oh yeah, like I want to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, and films like that, you know, I feel like I'm more into films than anything. But a film like that, you know, it introduces you to like writers and poets and like art that you didn't even know existed, you know, and it's like, oh, this has been around for a really long time.
Definitely.
You know, so can I contribute to that art too?
Yeah, well, so as an artist, you're contributing to that continuing narrative that's been ongoing, you know.
Yes.
Like all these voices from the past, and they're just echoing.
Right.
And you're adding to that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully down the line, like, oh, Kevin Flores, he was, you know, this person whose work I admired, and like, oh man, I want to do what he did, you know. So
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a big possibility. Like I that's how I feel, how I see it. Is like, you know, you're just continuing this line, this like thing that's just ongoing. Like an artist can die, and you know, we know of artists' work from like 500 years ago or 100 years ago, and it's just like, you know, that stuff that they put out, that's what survived them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, I don't know, it's pretty cool to be part of something like that.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so what are some other things you find inspiration in? You said films and...
Yeah, film. You know, I think it's a little mix of everything.
Yeah.
It can go from film to music to nature, to writing to photography. You know, there's always something that just like catches my eye, or you know, and I'm just like, whoa, okay. You know, and sometimes it doesn't have to be words. That's how I express myself, through words. But there are other artists, visual artists, that, you know, through photography, through painting. And I can be somewhere, and I can be like in the middle of nowhere, and I'll see this scenery, and I'm just like, okay. And I was just like, well, okay, I don't know how I'm feeling right now, but, you know, I don't know. It's just, I don't know how, it's an indescribable feeling.
Just like taking it all in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It can get overwhelming.
Yeah, and I find that, you know, the more I age, there are things that I find more overwhelming. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, I just get, you know, I get stuck in a moment for a while, and I'm just like, okay. And it could be a scenery, it could be a painting at a museum, you know, it's just like little things here. You know, musical artists, you know, they say a line in a song, and I'm just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That was powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, so I find inspiration everywhere, I guess.
Nice.
You know, it just depends where I'm at. You know, physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. For sure it did. Is there any work maybe that you would want to share with our audience, or a little poem or something? Yeah,
sure. I have this poem called Astral. And
Astral.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is an example of, I had just jotted random stuff down, and it's like, okay, that's my first draft, and now I want it to sound relatable and poetic. You know, I didn't want it to sound so simplistic, especially because it's a love poem.
Okay.
You know, it's a romantic poem, and I do have other works that are simplistic, but I like to challenge myself and be like, well, how can I write this piece different? So this one did take me a few months. So yeah, this is astral. Embers combust around your body to rise and fall with the wind gusts, as unborn wings emerge behind a blazing bronze, emitting a flame. From cremation of repressed rage, ashes snow below your entity, bearing a warrior's soul, soaring across the stars like a free phoenix. I travel beyond this conscious being for my projection to reach holiness, on a sacred path penetrating the vast, an aurora arranged for me to follow. You disorient my stellar perception with the ecstasy of thy pulchritude. By your aerial analogy of our heaven, that lit an inextinguishable fire in me.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. I mean, what can I say? That's amazing.
Thank you.
When did you write that?
I wrote that last summer, you know. I felt like I caught up on my writing when the pandemic happened.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I feel that the pandemic kind of forced us to, like, get more in touch with ourselves.
It definitely did.
Right. Yeah. It was intense. It was. Yeah.
And I think I sort of incorporated that intensity into my writing, you know, through those pieces that I completed during that summer. So, yeah. I hope that that message, you know, that feeling comes across in my writing. So, yeah.
Well, definitely, you're definitely transmitting different messages in your work. So.
Thanks.
I mean, because the overarching theme is love. You know, there's more to it though.
Yeah, definitely. You know?
Yeah. And I feel as an artist, the way you're describing your work and what you do, it's like, and I feel the same way about what I do. It's like you can see beyond what's merely on the surface. You know, like, you know how you're talking about, like, you know, that bittersweet.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, there's moments where it's like, yeah, like everything seems fine, but if you look deeper, there's more to it. You know, there's like,
I feel like there's always something more to it.
Yeah.
The deeper you go, you'll be surprised at what you find. I
mean, I think that's where you have to be wary, like, not to get sucked into, like, the rabbit hole or whatever.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You know?
Yeah.
But, like, because always remind yourself, like, yeah, there's that darkness and stuff, but then there's the light, you know, to kind of, like, lift us out of that.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of like dangerous territory, you know? Like,
I would say so, yes, because there have been times in my life where I'm like, okay, I don't know how to get out of this. And it's sort of, you know, like, you have that artistic vision, you know, it's the artist inside us. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you know, you're struggling with your mental health, you're struggling emotionally. And it's like you said, it's dangerous territory. You know, if you're not careful, you know, you'll stay there, you know. But thankfully, writing has been that for me. That it takes me out of it, you know. It doesn't keep me there. I find that some people, you know, they'll feel like they've discovered something therapeutic for them, and then it turns out to be quite the opposite. And I really hope for people to just, like, you know, broaden their horizons, you know, have an open mind, and for them to tell themselves, like, you know, you may be an amateur in this, but there's always somebody learning something new. Yeah. There's always going to be a new person to come along and be like, well, I feel really passionate about this, you know, and, you know, I may not be a professional at this, but I do want to invest my time in this so that
Yeah.
way I can hopefully one day reach that, you know? So, and that's what happened to me. I definitely had my bad days where I had to deal with my demons, and thankfully I overcame them. So
That's great, and
Yeah.
you're here with us today to telling the tale.
Yeah.
And so, well, you're talking about like someone being new and learning, and I actually want to segue into um, what we do, craft. I mean, we're
Yes.
providing different outlets to the community, and you know, hosting different programs. And so actually one of the programs that we're having over the summer, it's called Rap at the Park, Rhythm and Poetry. And so when my team was coming up with this, and someone threw the question of like, oh, well, we need a poet. Uh, Kevin's the first person I thought about, and I reached out to him like, well, I mean, I can't think of anyone better to like, you know, come and you know, do this workshop on poetry. So the thing with this is that Rap at the Park. This is a series. It's over 4 weekends. It's a series of workshops, and it merges different things, poetry into rap. Like anyone that's interested in like, you know, rap music or rapping. And then it also merges making beats, you know. So it's like all these things being brought together, and it's going to result in a final performance where we put everything, like all our participants put everything that they learn into their performance, and so they can decide that they just want to do a poem, or they can do their thing and rap in front of an audience and stuff. So Kevin will be our first guest artist to lead the poetry workshop, so that's very exciting, and you know, we're like just really pumped up to have you.
Yeah, no, same here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, it's exciting, and you know, I'm gonna get a little anxious.
Yeah.
But like all things, I feel like I'll fight through that anxiety, so that way, you know, I hope to get my message and my workshop across to people who are interested in this.
For
you know,
sure.
in poetry.
And I'm sure you will.
Yes.
And one more thing, what would you say to someone that's interested in writing or pursuing anything creative, but they're just like, oh, I don't know, like, what would you say to that person?
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You know, it's I think it's really great what you guys are doing, because it's allowing people to come out of their shells and hopefully fight through the anxiety, that shyness, and express themselves the way they know deep down they want to.
Yeah.
And you know, for example, with the students that I work with, you know, you see these minds wanting to broaden, and I just tell them, you know, like, just start writing anything down, you know. Even if it comes, like, it doesn't make any sense, just start writing something, you know. Or, you know, like, if you have your phone on you and you want to start recording something, just start spewing words, you know. Like, you can recite, you can write, you know, like, just start doing it, and eventually you'll find that flow, you know. You know, and some people, you know, might be hesitant because they're not used to doing that. It's a new experience for them.
Yeah.
You know, as simple as, you know, writing something down, but writing whatever they're feeling, whatever they're thinking, it will have an impact. So I just tell them that, like, hey, you know, don't be afraid. You know, we're all afraid of something.
Yeah.
But if you feel passionate, if you feel something that gets you excited, then just, you know, get it down on something, get it down on paper, get it down on a recording, dude. Don't let it slip away.
Yeah.
Because if you let something like that slip away, then that passion sort of just dies out over time and you don't even know it.
That's the saddest thing.
Bittersweetness,
Yeah.
you know. So.
Self-described bittersweet poet in the house.
Yeah.
No, but for sure. Well, I think that's a very good message to share. I think that's overcoming your fears and allowing
Yes.
yourself to be vulnerable.
You have to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they need to learn that the hard way. They need to learn that themselves.
Yeah.
You need to be vulnerable if you want to learn about yourself, find your identity.
Right.
Find that passion, find your art, find your voice. If you're not vulnerable, if there's some sort of pretense to something, you're holding yourself back. And I wouldn't recommend that. So.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing this space with me, and
Yes, no, thank you.
It's great talking. So hopefully I'm looking forward to see what you do in the workshops, and hopefully we'll hear from you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for everything. Thanks for listening, and yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you on our next episode. Bye.